Do you want to hear the craziest story time about one of the most intense signs I ever received from my mom? And then after that, it was radio silence for 10 years. And I'm a psychic medium. Most people, when I tell this story, are often very surprised. But in full transparency, at the time of my mom's passing, I was not, at least I didn't know I was a medium. I'd always been kind of inclined to spirit communication, the paranormal, all of that, but that's a story for another day. But I did not understand how mediumship worked, how spirit communication worked. I didn't even know that much about signs to begin with. I'm going to go ahead and tell this story. So it's a little bit of a long one. So if you're here for it, stick around. So the day that my mom passed, we went back to my grandmother's house because that is where she would have been living for a while. Family gets together and we were all just grieving together. I went upstairs to my grandmother's room with my grandmother, and at the end of her bed, she had this hope chest, those beautiful Lane hope chests. And inside of it, she would store all kinds of sentimental goods and things, like greeting cards that her grandkids had given her, that her children had given her, letters, like clothing, just a bunch of stuff. And my grandmother went ahead and pulled out this letter that my mom had written to her. Now, I was still in a great state of shock. I don't really remember the contents of the letter or what was said in the letter, but I do remember what happened while she was reading the letter. We were standing in her bedroom, and it's like a hot summer's eve. The fan, however, is not on, right? And the light is on the fan because it's dark. And we're standing underneath the fan, and it's one of those old school fans, kind of like the one above me that has a pulley there. So we're standing kind of directly underneath it, and the fan isn't on, the pulley is just hanging. But as my grandmother begins to read the letter from my mom out loud, and I was standing there with my husband taps me on the shoulder, and he points up, and I look up, and the pulley from the ceiling fan starts to sway. It's been swaying, and then it starts to move in a circle. And it's just moving faster and faster and faster as my grandmother reads this letter. And I was so taken aback by it because there was no breeze, there was no rational reason for this pulley to be doing that. It should not have been doing that. And I watched it as my grandmother continued to read, and this was like a 2 or 3 page letter. Then as she came to a close, the pulley then slowed down and it stopped. It was in that moment that I knew my mom was there. It was her way of letting us know that her energy was still with us and she hadn't gone anywhere. And I was so overwhelmed with emotion. It was like I could feel her in the room with us. And it was so potent. And I knew there was just this peace, this like sense of peace that came over me, that she was okay. Which is all I really was looking for. It's all any of us are ever looking for when our loved one transitions to the spirit world. And then after that, it was radio silence as far as signs go. I didn't receive another sign from my mom for, I don't know how long, even after I started developing as a medium, as I started coming into my own abilities. And to be honest with you, I really thought that I had moved through a lot of my grief. But we all know that grief is a bitch, and it's not linear, and it does its own thing. And it wasn't until 10 years later, approximately 10 years later, when I had been actively developing my mediumship, standing in the parking lot of the Seaside Center for Spiritual Living at Encinitas, after a 4-day seminar with my then mentor, who I've been working with for over a year, I was given a really poignant and moving message from my mom via this medium, via my mentor. Now, this is something that baffles me even still, because before that I had been going to circles, I had been going to mediumship practices, and my mom had never come through, which as a developing medium, that really did make me kind of question a lot of things with regards to why isn't my mom coming through. And that's when I learned that mediumship is really limited by the medium. It's limited by the breadth of the awareness of the medium. And a lot of the responses I would often get from other mediums who are practicing is when I would say, my mom passed away, they would be very surprised because I looked too young, right? And that's a video for another day. But it really took, I also think it was also on the part of my mom that she wasn't going to come through unless the medium could deliver the messages that she really wanted to get across, which my mentor was able to do with ease and grace and with such a poignancy that reading still literally Like, I go back to it to this day, and I'm still processing some of the things that came through in that reading. But the thing about that was that that reading then opened up a whole new layer of grief. It opened up whole new avenues for me to explore within myself and my own healing, which then allowed me to process even more. And it was after that that the signs actually started to come, or at least I was starting to be more aware of them. And now I have a very good line of communication with my mom. You know, we've developed this nice language. And something that I just want to say is that, you know, with regards to this, I get a lot of questions as to like, why am I not receiving communication from my loved one? If I'm doing something wrong. And the truth is that I really do believe in the intelligence of the spirit world to come through when we need it most, or when it's most appropriate. That they know better than we do. Sometimes what we want versus what we need are two different things, but it also comes down to our own expectations. If we have this idea of what a sign should be, or how it should look, or what have you, we're then limiting our field of view. We're limiting our awareness to become aware of just those things, when in actuality there's a multitude of ways that loved ones can come through. So I want to just kind of remind the, you know, people who, if you feel like you're not receiving signs or communication from your loved one, know that it's not that they're not there or they're not sending you signs. It's more that perhaps maybe you're just not in a place where you're ready to actually receive them. And I thought about this for a long time, because for myself, when I look back, I say I really wanted those signs. I really needed those signs. Where were they then? The truth is that maybe I wasn't ready for them. Because by receiving those signs, sometimes it makes it more real that they're gone. Maybe I wasn't in a place in my healing where if I received that sign so in your face or so clearly, that maybe it would have put me back somehow in my own healing process. Like, I don't know. So I trust in them, but I also know that it's up to us too to open our awareness to all the ways it can come through. So it's not that I communicate more readily with my own loved ones. It's just that I'm more aware of the different ways that loved ones can come through to send us signs that they're okay. So I'm more apt to pick up on those things, right? So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of nuance to this, but I just wanted to tell that story because I want people to know that it's not uncommon to feel like you're not receiving signs. But one of the biggest things is to let go of the expectation of what you think those signs should look like, what you think the communication is going to look like. Because ultimately they do know best. They know what we need more than we do. So, yeah. If you're still here for the end of the story time, thanks, you're a real one. I'd like to know if you've had any experiences like this, what yours have been with, you know, your loved ones in the comments. Or if you're a medium, you know, what was it like for you receiving signs from your own loved ones? How do you do that? Anyways, that's all for this one.